Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight. Got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet. Cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, welcome to November, or as we also like to call it, Movember.
Movember
Movember, yeah. Have you heard of Movember before,
for
man?
for your mustache.
Mustache.
Yeah, I'm aware of Movember.
You were, yeah. I've participated in it a few times. It's been fun. I shaved off my entire beard last year for it, I believe. My wife was not happy,
Yeah,
but I raised a good amount of money, so I can't
that's
complain there.
and that's the thing too, is you shave it off and then you let it grow, and that's the way it originally started. There's other things you could do now, but it was to basically
That was the original OG thing to do, was to
yeah.
shave it off and grow a mustache. I will say that the one person that I know who has done that exact thing for multiple years running, actually 12 years to be exact, is Matt Schneider from City Dads.
Mhm.
His wife hates it. I love it when he posts. It's like, oh, it's on. Like,
It's
where's this
on.
gonna go?
Yeah.
It's very entertaining. Every day he posts a picture and talks about Movember and
Mhm.
just what he's working on doing. And I mean, he alone has raised like $4,000 in years past. So
Sweet.
um, yeah, he's, just all of his friends and folks just kick in money for it. But yeah, there
Mhm.
are different ways to participate in Movember, different from just the shave your facial hair off and grow it back. Because I think if I did that now, my wife would definitely cry,
Oh
and
yeah.
she might kick me in an unpleasant place at the same time, and I don't need that.
Yeah, I shaved off my mustache and goatee. There's not a lot there anyway. I've always had very fine hair, and it takes forever. And I can't grow a beard for it just won't do it. But I shaved off just that. Like, I'll just do it and started, and it was the worst mistake I made the entire year. I
Mm.
looked like a turtle with his shell ripped off. I mean, it was just naked. And it wasn't like, oh, you look like a baby face. No, it was like, whoa, what is wrong with you? And it's a very important thing. I'm not going to shave again, but it is a
No.
very important event to participate in and to support, because it speaks to one, prostate and testicular cancer, which is
Yeah.
something that men just don't. We really never learned about. We never talk about. We don't want to admit that we even it could even exist, and yet it has taken the lives of so many men through the years because of that.
Yeah.
And then they've also moved it into mental health and suicide awareness, again for that same reason, because men don't talk about it.
Yep.
And we lose men every year to these things. So
Yeah.
it's an excellent community and charity to give to.
Oh
I
yeah, definitely.
personally, I'm going to get on a team. I'm trying to get the board together as a team. We've been messing around. Unfortunately, it's already November 1st, and we don't have anything in place.
Oh,
But
good.
we're getting something together, and I'm not going to shave. I might let it just grow, which I I really like my mohawk, and I really like a smooth shaved face, but I might
Well,
let it grow. But I'm probably
could
also going to do walking or a weekly group or something like that to focus on mental health and
yeah.
see what I can do in that
That, that-
vein.
that's what I was gonna say. So there are multiple ways for you to be involved, for you or anybody else that's listening. So, if growing a mustache or a beard or whatever is just doesn't even sound like a pleasant experience to you, you can, basically you can pledge to run or walk a certain distance. I think they're shooting for participants to do anywhere like around 60 miles in a month. I did that actually with Ed a couple of years ago. We had a little sidebar challenge, and we're running 60 miles. First person to run 60 miles the fastest won their choice of bourbon or beer from the
All
losing
right.
participant. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I beat him by 2 minutes.
Nice. Doesn't matter. Winning is winning.
Just barely. Yeah. Right.
Bourbon
Winning
is bourbon. So
yeah. Well, he ended up sending me a really nice assortment of beers from out his way. So that was
good.
Really cool.
And were you were actually running, because I know you can walk or cycle or anything like that, but you guys were running because I know you also bike.
Yep. We were running. Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Okay.
you can bike, you can walk, all those things. The other one that's really cool, and I did this, was I partnered with a local brewery here in town and did a for every pint sold, they donated $1. And so that was really
Nice.
cool because they ran it from when it opened to when it closed for that whole day, and donated that amount of money. And that's part of one of the things you can do. It's called host a Movent or moment. Yeah, sorry. And basically that's the idea. Like, it just kind of opens it up to being able to, hey, like, this is what I want to do. It happened to work out really well with the brewery that I contacted with, not knowing this, but the one of the guys that was involved with like their marketing stuff actually is a testicular cancer survivor, and so it was like perfect.
Yeah.
Because like we were able to promote it, their brewery got behind it, and then on top of it, like, we were able to get like local news involved in it, so that they actually pushed it a little bit more for us, which was great. So there's some definite like awesome ways to get the community involved in your fundraiser and that kind of thing. And then the last thing they have is the mow your own way. So it's just like a choose your own adventure challenge. So that's interesting in itself. Yeah.
Choose your own adventure. You know, and I love, I don't know if you read those books as a kid, but Choose Your Own Adventures were like the best. You ever read?
Well,
I don't know if you read them.
I never really read them. However, they now have them in like Netflix form for like, click right or left. So like they've got them with like Bear Grylls. They've actually got one with Minecraft that my kids love to watch and do.
Oh yeah, we've watched that a few thousand times.
Times.
It's been yeah.
But I mean, that's the kind of cool thing about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I love their description. I'm going to read it because I will forget. It was mow your own way, a choose your own adventure challenge, epic in scope and scale. And I love the thought of that. Like, yeah, make it as epic as you want. Like, what are you going to do? Well, for Movember, I'm going to, I don't know, climb a mountain or climb trees, or, I'm going to go caving, or whatever it is you're going to do that, is going to put you in a position that it's epic in scale.
Joe's going to drive to every every brewery in Washington that has a pumpkin beer and drink it as long as he raises like $300 at each brewery. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I will pay for him not to drink any more pumpkin beer. The man has had a moment. He has had a moment, in fact. Yeah, so
he has, exactly.
So going into November, I'm hoping to pick up some stuff on that, do it on my personal page. Again, maybe get a team with either the board, I'm hoping, or the Dad's Gotta Talk guys, if I can. We'll see what's what. But we also have, speaking of groups and amazing things going on, we have an amazing guest.
Yes, we do have an amazing guest coming on. Why don't you give us a little bit of a spiel on our guest that's coming on today?
Well, I met this man in Cincinnati. Actually, he did a breakout for the National At Home Dad Network's Home Dad Con, and I just happened to go into that one. It was just one of the ones I was like, oh, this is good. And it was talking about emotional equity, right, in your home, and that was a very interesting topic to me. But looking at it as an at-home dad, the equity that we have in home, because he went beyond emotional, but talking about how equitable is your house. And I feel like whenever you have an at-home parent, it's never balanced. Whoever the other parent is, doesn't matter what their gender is, who they are at all. Anyway, it's if you're not the one that's in the house dealing with the kids and doing all the things, you're not working as hard. I'm just gonna say it. There's just not a balance, in my opinion. But anyway, so that was presented by Brian Anderson. Yeah. And Brian is a part of, and one of the major parts of, one, Dads with Daughters, which is a huge Facebook page. And also they have a podcast of their own, and then developed it into what we're going to talk about tonight, which is Fathering Together.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to this. It's an interesting topic because it does go more into things like work-life balance, or integration, I guess would be a better way to put it. And how we as dads in the 21st century should be looking at it. And originally, I think it was probably focused more for dads who have work outside the home and how their business and their, their corporate life or whatever they have going on there, even if it's a carpenter or a plumber, that takes up so much of their time, so much of their energy. And then when they get home, they just aren't fully there for whatever reason,
Yeah.
But it really, really works for us as well as at-home dads. And I can't wait to see where Brian goes with this. He's been doing so many things so far. I'm really looking forward to having a discussion with him tonight and talking about his new book. And there's a couple of really good stories in there. And he's quoted a lot of dads that if you go through, you may know them. It's awesome.
I love that there's books like that, though, that are quoting a lot of the dads that are, active, involved in what's going on with, the communities and things like that. Because it's kind of this sort of neat little, like, almost like celebrityism in a way. But none of the guys look at it that way. It's just, hey, like, here's an opportunity to just share something and put it in a book. For me, I'm like, I love it because I'm like, oh, like, this is great. Like, later on in life, like, my kids or grandkids like might open up the book and be like, oh, like, hey, there's Papa's, quote. Like, he's in a book. Like, what? Or something along those lines. I don't know. Like, to me, that to me is just like kind of leaving a legacy that's an outside of the box thought into leaving a legacy.
And legacy for our community, even, definitely for our family, kids, grandkids, and all that, but also for our community. Yeah. That you can say, one, you can look at it and go, hey, I know that guy. Even if it doesn't list their last name, it's just their last initial or whatever. Wait. I bet I know that guy. And then you ask him, okay, you're going to sign the book now. We've done that with other books. Right. That kind of follow the same theme.
Well, it's the idea. It's sort of the same thing with, like, the books that Hogan Hilling and Al Watts have been a part of writing and that kind of stuff from like back in the like early 90s. And, those of us who have read those books or read excerpts from out of those books, you're just like, man, like, I just want to just meet that person. And, it's so great that they like share that. I completely identify with what's going on in that situation right there. And so, I think it's great. And I'm excited to talk to him too. And I'm curious about the book. I think you got the book. I didn't. I was meaning to like reach out to him and get it, and it just did not work out for me, which is fine. But it'll be good.
You're an audiobook kind of guy, so just
I am an audio.
Record it and
so that's why it'll be fun just to hear, just to be able to talk to him in person. So so we'll bring him on in a moment and have a fun conversation with him. But enjoy this commercial while you wait, and we'll be right back. Become a member of the National At-Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support. Connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At-Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate. And you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At-Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today. All right, and we are back, and we've got Brian Anderson, like we said, and we're going to have some fun talking about the latest book here that he's written and about the Fathering Together group, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. You never know with Danny and I; it can get off the rails real quick, but it's okay. Rabbit trails are fun, right?
Yep. It's the best way to live. ADD, baby, all the way.
But yeah, Brian, I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. We're excited to just see what all's been going on. I know that you have been a part of groups like Fathering Together, and is it Fathers of Daughters, I believe, is the other
Dads with
big
Daughters.
group.
Daughters.
Yeah, Dads with Daughters.
Or Dads with Daughters. Yeah. So yeah, so you're part of Dads with Daughters, and I think that's where you and I kind of connected, was through that, and maybe even Fathering Together as well. But yeah, you've been busy. That group's been growing.
Yeah, it's not. I was just telling some folks the other day, I never intended on being a executive director of my own nonprofit, and yet here I am having my midlife crisis, not buying a sports car or running off with a supermodel, but helping dads be better dads. So I don't know. I got some kind of memo mix up, but yeah, it's been about 4.5 years, 5 years really, if you count pre-Facebook planning, but February will be 5 years as a group, Dads with Daughters. And
Wow.
really, with the birth of my second daughter, I started getting into fatherhood work and with more intention because I needed it for myself, not necessarily for others. And
Mhm.
you know, kind of like with the Home Dad Network, I've gotten involved with on and off, and city dads groups. Like snowballs just tend to happen around dads who really care about being intentional and healthy in their fatherhood expression. So it's been a hell of a ride, and I'm excited to be talking to y'all about it.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
that snowball too is it's an excellent way to say it, because we have so many dads that want to be involved.
Right.
They want to be a part, not only of a community or a men's group, but with their family. They want to be there for their kids. They want to be, involved and responsible and taking care of them in all the ways that they need it. And we have more and more dads that are looking at it and thinking, wait, why am I standoffish? Why am I just go to work, come home, and let, my spouse or partner take care of the children?
Yep.
Why can't I do this? And that was a lot of times because either the way we were taught or what we weren't taught in a lot of ways. But it's amazing the amount of dads that we have. And that's why groups like yours, I feel, grow exponentially like they have. So you have Dads with Daughters and you have dads with sons too, right?
Yeah. So Chris Lewis, the other co-founder, both of us have 2 daughters. And so we didn't really feel it was our place to start a Dads with Sons group because our experience was daughters. And as the group kept growing, we brought on volunteers to help moderate the space and really create content to engage our membership. And several of them have sons. Several of them also have trans children. And we started really talking about like, okay, how do we expand beyond this? And so there is a Dads with Sons Facebook group. But as a nonprofit, I was really adamant to say, if we're going to do gender equity work, if we're going to invite dads into deeper conversation with their families, it can't just be dads who have daughters. It's got to be everybody who identifies as a dad, and let people label themselves. So we have, grandfathers, we've got uncles, we've got trans individuals that are in that fatherhood role, so to speak. We have lesbian couples that are seeking resources. So it's been a wild ride, and I think that, again, it just speaks to how diverse fatherhood has become. It's no longer this kind of like Mad Men, Leave It to Beaver, 1950s, I work and then come home, sit and talk at dinner, and then go to my den or go out with my guy friends at night. It's really a game-changing world right now, and I'm just honored to be a part of the conversations more than anything, because it's so enriching for myself, and I'm sure that I'm not going to speak for the two of you, but in many ways it's self-fulfilling, right? This work we do. So
Oh yeah, it's one of those things where the decision to stay at home has just had such an impact on my kids and my family, even people outside of family, honestly, that just being able to talk about a different dynamic. It's some people, it's very like kind of mind blowing. We've had missionaries stay here at the house for like a week at a time back before COVID, and on a couple of those occasions. You'd have conversations, and it would just be a lot for them to wrap their mind around, was the idea that although I'm the man of the house type of deal, like I'm at home taking care of the kids and other things, and my wife is actually the one off, like, making the money and that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
the conversation around like, well, how does that translate as far as leading your house and doing different things like that. And it led to some great conversations. And honestly, like, to be able to send somebody back to like Nigeria or something and have them be able to talk about, like, I experienced this and it's so
Yeah.
different than anything I would have ever thought it to be. That's one of the things that I feel is like one of the highlights to being a stay-at-home dad, is being able to have that kind of impact almost on like an international level without really like yearning to have that. So it's definitely a different time for sure.
Yeah. I have so many thoughts based on what you just shared. I'll just go with these two, and we'll get to the rest later on, maybe. But yeah, I think it's just so fascinating how we equate success with money in
Hmm.
to an extreme right now. And I don't know, like the more I work, the less connected I feel with my family or even friends. And there's definitely been moments where I'll see friends, especially as we emerge from the pandemic, and they're like, "How are you doing?" And all I have to talk about is fatherhood and work. And I'm like, "That's not who I want to be. I want to be able to talk about hobbies or other
Hmm.
stuff that I'm involved in, and build connections on multiple levels." And yet, if we're so focused on what I do and the jobs that I take on rather than who I am and the identities I hold, then all of our relationships are going to be at surface level. And I was blessed to have a dad who lived deeper than surface level. And sometimes, I joke like we all have to go to therapy for some reason. And sometimes I go because my dad was too caring. And I'm just like in a way ruined because I don't like that surface level. It's hard for me just to have surface level conversations. And I mean, Danny, you and I have talked quite a few times and we go deep in 30 seconds, right? There's no
Yeah,
like
that's
icebreakers. We just go there.
yeah,
Um,
that's my passion, I think.
yeah. But I think on that international level, I talk with dads. There's groups in India, Japan, Australia, a couple guys in Finland I recently connected with. And yeah, there's a sea change across multiple cultures where this idea of being a successful dad is no longer tied to what kind of car I have or how big the house is. It's measured also in, was I able to cuddle with my kids and read them a bedtime story, or any number of things. I mean, I don't know if you all saw a recent viral image of a coal miner going to
Yes,
a basketball game,
he
right?
went to a
And
UK game, yeah, because
UK, yeah, yeah,
right
yeah,
down the
that's right.
highway from here. So yeah,
Right, exactly.
it's
Yeah. And
been all
it's
over the
like,
news.
I brought that up just yesterday with a young man who is hoping to become a dad soon. He and his girlfriend are trying, and he was like, I want to go into the IT world, and it's like cutthroat, and I've got to put in the long hours. How am I going to be able to be a connected dad? And I referenced that photo to say, like, you got to make even if you get 15 minutes in the morning, make those 15 minutes count, right?
And
Hmm.
And
yeah, as I say, and real quick, just to kind of cut in, so because if anybody hasn't seen that story, basically in Kentucky, yeah, as I say, look, Danny was giving me this look like I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm
sorry,
Um,
gonna
yeah,
have to Google this.
yeah, Google it for sure. You can just put in coal miner goes to the basketball game. So he got out of the mine. He was covered in coal miner dust or coal dust. His son wanted to go to this University of Kentucky basketball game, and so completely covered. He's in his full uniform, which is basically like it's like coveralls, is what it
right.
is. I mean, this guy, he would stick out like a sore thumb, honestly. And he showed up with his little boy and they watched the game. And this story just came out about who he was and why he did it and what he was doing. And of course, there's always going to be like internet trolls who have just awful things to say, which came out to it. But in all, the thing that really came out about it is that the University of Kentucky's coach like understood what this dad was going through, why he was doing it. Like he understood it all because it is the background of his family, of his childhood. And this family is now like basically getting kind of the royal treatment from the people of Kentucky. And there's a bunch of different things that are being brought up into it. It's honestly a really cool story. You should definitely, I'll make sure I'll put a link in the bio for it. But yeah, I mean, it was just one of those things, like a lot of people woke up the next morning to like see it, and it immediately like brings tears to your eyes when you watch it, because it's just such a cool story. But it makes it fully fits into exactly what we're talking about with, dads trying to be there in situations where like they're working long hours, and how do I connect with my kids?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great.
And one of the main things, like you said, when you're looking at a big job, this requires this much. And in, I don't mean to sound derisive of it at all, but in the society that we live in, that's it. Yeah. What's your job? What are you doing? And I need 9 hours today. Oh, I need 10 hours tomorrow. And it's an expectation even, so that when we just ask for time off, paternity leave has been a huge conversation over the last couple of years. And my baby was just born. How do you not just, of course, go spend 6 weeks with your family?
Yeah.
How is it that there's any other option, really? But of course, generationally, I mean, it's been years and years and years, and we've been in this rut of it. So it's always exciting, I feel, to see more and more how we're changing that, or how the world is changing.
Yeah. I say I spend a lot of time talking to dads, mainly when I'm out driving for Uber, and the paternity, like being home, like with your kids, like after they're born, being there to support your spouse or partner during the time when they're recovering is a big topic. And it's very interesting to hear all of the different like dynamics involved in it, because no two companies are alike in their plans, which is crazy. And we're one of the few countries that it is so like just up in the air, and it's there is no one way type of situation. So we've got some work to do, and I feel like groups like the National At-Home Dad Network, Fathering Together, there's a bunch of different other organizations out there as well, I feel like are really trying to push that agenda on to be an actual legislated federal mandated thing. And so might not happen today, but I feel like it is definitely on the horizon to be accomplished. So that's
big changes.
But I love that. Fathering Together, by the way, that group has really just it's it's a very diverse group. You mentioned that it's in multiple countries. I feel like it has no borders, which is really
Dads
cool.
Without Borders.
Yeah, almost. Yeah,
group.
Very much so. But at the same time too, like I know being in there, like I've seen some really cool stories of, like you're talking about like different dads talking about how fatherhood is different to them, or they talk about how they grew up and how they're trying to like change their motif. And I really enjoy like that part of it. I don't usually spend time like commenting so much, but I definitely will get on and like see different comments. A lot of times too, like once I see like someone post something and you see like 80 comments, you're like, yeah, my comment's in there somewhere, I'm good. Like kind of deal. Someone's already touched it. It's all well. But it is a very diverse community that has a lot of just a lot of, I don't know what you want to call it exactly, but camaraderie, I guess, would be the biggest part of it, and a brotherhood there that's grown into something really cool. And that's one of the things that we talk about in the National At-Home Dad Network is brotherhood and that kind of thing. But I feel like for you guys, one of the things that really kind of kicked you off into sort of like in the face of everybody to see was a few years back. And I remember talking to Chris about this. You guys got the ability to do a commercial at a Mets game. And that was really neat, because to have a group like yours for Facebook to take that and like just throw it in the face of such a large sporting event was quite unique and really cool. Have you continued to see like just that impact even through COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I think the novelty of not the novelty, but the commercials worn off. Like it hasn't been on for a while, but every
Right.
once in a while, like I'll mention like, yeah, I run a dad's group on Facebook that's 100,000, and people are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, if you saw this commercial, they're like, oh, where the dads go to that game, and I'm like, yeah, that was us. They're like, no
Yeah.
way, right? Like,
So it still
uh,
has that impact there.
it
People
is
still
how,
see it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's still kind of this like bizarre thing that to some extent I've taken for granted now that it's like 4 years on because it was just not that I got to fly to New York and have this royalty treatment, or that my 5-year-old like had this nice suite that she watched a baseball game, and I'm like, this is not normal. This will probably not happen again for a long time. But yeah, I mean, the whole experience was surreal, and our group at the time, I remember the weekend we did the filming, we crossed 10,000 members. Chris and I like were on our phones like making a post like, "Hey, we're at 10,000. How cool is this?" After about a year. And then within 8 months we like, 10x'd it, right? And crossed 100,000 by the end of 2019. And I think the challenge was like, how do we make this international? Like, what are the um sorry, somebody's crying upstairs. I think they're watching a show that has a bad ending.
Oh,
So,
it's all good.
um, the
That'll do, pig.
yeah,
That'll do.
seriously, my girls get so invested and they cry at the most interesting of moments. Um, but
Same.
we had to figure out like, okay, fatherhood looks different everywhere. Like expressions of fatherhood look different everywhere. But there are some universal truths that we wanted to hold up, and that was like no violence in terms of like even jokes that were like cracking on stereotypes of like, oh, I've got to get a shotgun because I've got a daughter, like I got to
Hmm.
protect her from the boys. And it's like, no, you could just talk to boys to be more respectful or not assume that boys are going to come calling, right? Like there's all these things that we were proactive in finding moderators who would support this. And we definitely had people leave. We had a lot of fights in the early
That
days
I was
because,
just gonna say, yeah, like
yeah,
I watched quite a few people leave for just that
yeah,
reason, and you're just like you could see like one, they're being introduced to something new compared to
right,
their old way of thinking, and they're like
right,
instead of being able to handle it and take it all in, they're just like I'm out, and I'm just
yeah,
like I'm like at
yeah.
what point do they like wake up and realize like wow like actually I need to change? So
Right, right. Oh, the world is bigger than my neighborhood, right?
yeah, right.
And we had a lot of fights around guns, and because there are some groups that allowed gun posts, and we were just like, you know what, we're gonna say no. And then people were like, but I go hunting, right? Like this is part of my relationship with my kid. And we're like, okay, gun posts that are specific to hunting is fine. And I've been a vegetarian for like 20 years now, and I remember one post, this daughter, her face was like lit up with excitement that she finally shot her first deer, and
Yeah.
I was proud of her. Like I went hunting as a young person. Like my cousins taught me how to clean prepare a deer carcass
Yep.
and everything. And I'm just like, not going to do that anymore. But the sustainability of life that comes with, the circle of life and all that kind of Lion King stuff, like that's legit, right? And I'm not going to like
Hmm.
stand in the way of a subsistence farmer or, potentially, another culture celebrating a sacrificial moment that is a key to their religion or culture, right? And
Or
so,
passing down a generational thing that's
right,
like very family central. And I feel like too for dads who maybe they didn't have that son that they were like hoping to pass it on to because that's how they've grown up, and it's like but I have my daughter. I feel like that it kind of just breaks this glass ceiling that
yeah,
some would have just passed over. So
yeah. And my dad's a carpenter. He's like a master at his craft, and my sister got all those genetics. Like I'm good at like sanding down pieces or cutting where he tells me. Even at like he's 72 now, like he'll be like, let's go work on a project. And I basically, I'm a gopher, right? I just go get stuff that he needs, even though I should be able to do these things. And it's to the point where my daughters are like, oh, something broke. Let's call grandpa. I'm like, I can still do some things. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's no real I don't know. So yeah, in the group, it was just great to kind of break down some of those stereotypes and norms. And my favorite moment though, I don't even know if either of these guys are still in the group, but it was a young guy who wasn't married, but he and his girlfriend had a kid, and he complained about wanting to play more video games, and she just needed to understand he wanted to play some video games, and she moved out, and it was like this whole thing that he was looking for sympathy, that he wanted to keep playing video games. And we debated, do we let this get posted? He's going to get like attacked. And we're like, no, he needs to learn a valuable lesson. I'm sure the guys in our group will handle it. And sure enough, he got a lot of tough love from a lot of the older dads in the group saying like, you got to suck it up. This is what fatherhood is, right? Like, sorry, you can't play video games anymore, or you can't play 5 hours. You can only play 30 minutes, right?
Yep.
And he took it on the chin really well. Like I remember him responding in a follow-up post, like thanking everyone and realizing he had some growing up to do. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, just the connections and relationships that join. And I think having the pandemic happen when it did with the rise of our group, in a way, like helped our group bond a bit more too, because we had members who were nurses and doctors who were willing to share some advice and give feedback. We did virtual dad-daughter dances. We had members like do how to dance, how to do certain crafts in the group. So it really became like an escape for many dads in the midst of the craziness. And now we're like figuring out, okay, how do we leverage this to create in-person groups again and help guys who may have only connected on this platform to now drive 3 blocks over and actually meet in person, right? Because
face to face.
Yeah,
crazy.
This guy literally stopped me at a Steak and Shake down the street from my house, and he's like, "Are you Brian?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yeah." And we had met in the group, but didn't realize how close we lived to each other. So
excellent.
Yeah, worlds collide.
Yeah. So you have this, and this group is mainly on Facebook. Huge group. Famous group, in fact, because played the Mets game. That's not a lot of other groups can say that, right?
Well, so, technically Yankees. Sorry, I don't want to.
Was it Yankees?
Yeah, it was the Yankees stadium, but I had a Mets.
I'd say I thought it was a Mets Yankees game. Is that what it was?
No. So well, the commercial made it look like it, but no. The magic of theater or whatever, but yeah, we did have a section that were Mets, but it was in the Yankee Stadium, and I had a Mets t-shirt and got some grief for it, but whatever.
Anyway, but still famous. Yeah. So how do we get from that amazing organization to this book, Fathering Together?
Yeah, as the group really grew, like as you were both mentioning, there was just a lot of themes coming up in posts, a lot of informal conversations I was having, kind of doing some like surveys and asking guys what they would want. It was very clear that everybody in the group wanted to be a better dad. There was no question about that. But so many had no clue how to get there. And through the conversations I was having, servant leadership just kept coming up for me. And for those who don't know about servant leadership, in a nutshell, this guy named Robert Greenleaf back in the 1960s, big business leader, CEO, created a new philosophy towards leadership to say, if I'm going to be a successful CEO, I need to serve my staff so that they can do their jobs as well as they can to the best of their ability, so that I can go to my board, to my stakeholders and say, hey, we're running at top notch because I've created opportunities for my staff to grow and develop. And all of those themes that come out of this model that is primarily just business, right? There's all these books on how to transform business with servant leadership. I was like, dads are in business. We need to translate all this business stuff into the home. Why don't we use this as a model to help dads translate all of this work ethic into connecting with our kids, so that instead of just being a team leader that does icebreakers and emotional intelligence stuff with their peers, translate it and make it age appropriate and developmental to their families, or using Asana and Trello and these program management software systems to make a product successful on the grocery store shelf, using that to get kids dressed and fed and out the door to school on time, right? Like translatable. And so I got lucky and I was accepted into this book writing program called Creator Institute. And basically over the course of 20 weeks, we had weekly meetings that pushed us to write better and write a lot. And I interviewed over 50 dads to really see if this model would hold water. And, not every aspect of the model works for fatherhood, but enough of it did. And so I kind of pulled out, these major themes to be a connected dad through this servant leadership mindset. And so now it's out and people are buying it and calling me and talking to me. And I'm just like, oh, I'm a published author now. Right. I got to shift this scheme of who Brian Anderson is into a new kind of realm, so to speak.
Yeah. And did you do this? I know every book is a team, and we've had many authors that they always say that, but obviously you had other people helping you. But realistically, was this your thing, or was it Chris that helped you with Fathering Together as well? Or
well, Chris and I built the nonprofit organization together, brought a board together, and developed our strategic plan, all of that. But I've been a writer and a blogger on and off. That's how Chris and I kind of became friends when we met professionally. And yeah, the writing was always there for me as a side passion project. And then I just kept writing. And a mentor of mine who's written many books himself said, if you can't fall asleep at night because you have to write a couple pages on an idea you have, then it's about time you write a book.
That sounds like a David Stanley quote. Was that who that was?
It was not David Stanley, but it's totally totally would be David Stanley, who's on our board, right? So he definitely has some influence on Fathering Together. But it's kind of just like, I mean, you hear LeBron James talk about basketball, right? Like he just dreams and breathes it, right? And it's kind of like writing a book. If you just have these ideas swirling and you can't get them out, other than to write a book, then you got to write the book. If anybody will read it, right? But you got to at least write it out. And
you have to write it. Yeah.
But with this book, I mean, the interviews really wrote the book for me because the dads had such amazing stories. Danny, you're included, so I'll give you a shout out. But so many dads, my dad included, and a lot of his friends who in many ways helped raise me, would just give me these heartbreaking stories of what fatherhood was and wasn't for them. And so in some respects, I just kind of took a lot of quotes and turned them into stories in the book, and then tied a lesson from the servant leadership model to the experience that these dads were having. And it's interesting because, I've had some people reach out to me and say they couldn't get through it because they were crying. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to, was it that bad? Or, I try to lighten the mood. And my mom's cousin actually said, I have no memories of my father treating me like the stories that Brian writes about in this book. And so I'm crying for the missed opportunities that the younger version of me didn't have. And he's a great, he's older now and, my mom's age and everything. So, didn't have any kids or whatnot, which is fine, but it just opened up a new door of our relationship. So when I reached out to him, I was like, hey, I didn't realize I was going to affect you so much. And he was just like, F you, right? Like, how dare you open up all these emotions?
That's right. Right. Yeah.
And then we had a great conversation about it.
I was fine before I read your book, sir.
Right.
How dare you make me cry my own tears?
I'm going to therapy all over again. Yeah. It's true. And Danny, you and I have talked about just the sea change that is happening. And we kind of got into it a bit this morning or earlier today, but so many dads are making the choice that my dad and several of his friends in the early 80s made of, I'm going to be there for my kids and work as best I can, right? Like I work for my family rather than work for my boss. And how will I take that money to go on vacations, care for my community, whatever, but also take the time off that I need in my case, my dad built sets for the musicals my sister and I were in. Or he was the Cub Scout pack leader for a few years, right? Or he always made sure he went on vacation or field trips with us and such. So he, made some big shoes for me to fill. Damn it.
But he did great work in doing that too. And having, because a lot of times we look at what we're doing with our kids and what we're going to do day to day and whatever it might be. And there's always kind of, I think, a thought of the materialism behind it. Am I giving my kids enough stuff? And I think at least the three of us all kind of realize, stuff is not that as important as time is.
Right.
But it's so amazing to have the ability to look back at those memories. Like you've mentioned him building the sets for the plays. Wow. if you could imagine, because your dad is right there, and maybe something he's not really, I don't know your dad, but maybe something he's not really vested in musicals. Maybe he just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
But still, he comes in and says, well, I don't know what you're doing, but I will support you.
Right.
And that is so very important as a parent, to be able to step out of your own comfort area. And you touch on this again in the book, and also in speaking about gender equity, and that ability to say, okay, I thought my kid was this, but I'm just going to let my kid decide who they are and what they are and what they want. And that's amazing. And it's great, I think, that you have that to look back on, that your father did that, because now you can look at it and think, I'm tired. I don't want to read this book. We've read this book, or I don't want to let my child read this book to me, because this is going to be a grueling 30 minutes, but it's only actually going to be 4 minutes, but it's going to feel like it. Right. But you have that ability to look back on that. And I think that's it's an excellent example for dads now, who look at what they do with their kids, or what they want to do or should be doing with their kids. Make those memories. Be that person that's doing that thing that, Minecraft comes up a lot, or YouTube comes up a lot, and like the memes. Can you actually die from listening to your kid talk about YouTube? Because it seems like you could die from it, because it's been a lot of this, but the reality of it is, that's what your child is excited about. That's what your child wants to tell you about. And whatever it is, you just need to learn to take it in and enjoy it for them as best you can. Or maybe just tell them, look, I don't think I can be as excited as you are about this, but I love you, and I love that you're doing this, and I want to help you. Right. So that you've told that story about your dad, being a master carpenter, right? I mean, a true craftsman, and yet going in and doing the sets. That's just beautiful. I love that.
Brian, I'm curious, with the book coming out, and you say you've been getting lots of people that are contacting you and talking about what they've read and things like that. I like to play devil's advocate sometimes. I'm curious, like, have you received like negative feedback or anything along the lines of just like people being like, this is hogwash, or this, this, I don't know. Have you had any of that kind of experience with the book at all?
Yeah, not yet. I'll check on Amazon after this and see.
No, you're fine. I was just I didn't know if anybody like had gotten it and was just like, what the heck is this?
So, I mean, I try not to be too controversial with this book. I could have gone there. And Mike Adamski wrote a book called Dads Raising Resilient Daughters. Shoot, I'm totally spacing on it now. Sorry if you're listening to this, Mike. But his book was like amazing. And I quoted a few times because it really is like, all right, this is not cool, and I'm going to tell you about it. Right. And he's really aggressive in his language. And I love the book, but it wasn't my style. And I was like, I'm a minister, I'm a community organizer. I'm just going to take a more, I don't know, peaceful, spiritual, like homily kind of sermon approach to writing this book. And in so doing, I feel like it's a lot harder to say like, this is hogwash, because I'm trying to be so nice. But I definitely lost some donors to Fathering Together as an organization, because of the story that you alluded to, Danny, in the let our kids identify how they need to be and support us as best they can, because these individuals didn't necessarily believe in queer culture, and that it was okay to accept queer culture, that they were mandated by God or whatever to say this is a sin and we need to stamp it out. And so they've not read the book yet. I'm sure there will be some negativity, and that's fine. It's going to happen. I probably could have researched some aspects a little bit better or whatever, right? There's definitely some critiques to be made, but I've been blessed so far that it's been super fans knocking on my door.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but I will say just yesterday, somebody asked me a question, and they were a more, blue collar day labor type work. And it was similar to the IT individual who spoke to me about like, how do I make time? And their critique was not that it was poorly written, but they were just like, well, what about me? Right? Like, I have to have these 3 jobs. I have to make a living. We've chosen for my wife to be a stay-at-home mom, which means I'm working more. And so that that did strike home, and that was a piece that I wasn't able to weave into the book just because of time and limits of how much you can write.
Right.
Like I didn't want a 300-page academic piece. I wanted it to be more of a quick read, and so I made some conscious decisions to like leave out what about single dads, or what about traditional families where the dad is the sole breadwinner. How do they still connect? And for me, that has made me think about like, okay, well, that's for the retreat, or that's the small group exercise we'll do on Zoom,
Yeah.
right? And bring that diversity into other spaces. And then when volume 2 comes out in a couple of years, I'll make sure to include more, right?
But I think too that opens up the ability to have that conversation, like for
Sure.
them to actually just bring that, be like, hey, listen, like, yeah, I wasn't able to connect on it, but here are some ways to do this, like, and without having it be in the book kind of deal. So you're not gonna be able to put anything up. It's like when you take a book and make it a movie kind of thing, like not everything fits in there type of deal. So
Yeah.
you know, you're limited to whatever your publisher, whatever says this is how many pages you get kind of deal. So I can understand that completely.
And like you said, it's a quick read. You know, it's really, and I don't mean that in any way like it's too short or it's too limited or anything like that. It's an excellent, and I've only skimmed like a lot of the chapters and then read paragraphs here and there. I have not read it cover to cover, but it gives you the ability to pick it up, dive into it, find the chapter that really fits what you're looking for and how your connectivity comes to it. And then absolutely opens that conversation. And I agree with Brock 100% in that. I think he said it perfectly, but I have to say it again because that's what I do. But it's that ability to say, well, wait, I love this, but what about me? Right?
Yeah.
What about my situation? What about this? Or, you know, this is great advice for somebody who isn't running into these problems. And like you said, you can't write a book that's going to hit every single target. There are too many problems that each individual could have, but it's fantastic. Like you said, for a workshop, I don't know, you know, Home Dad Con's coming. I'm just saying, I'm going to do a breakout. I'm just throwing it out there, you know.
Well, I feel like organizers of City Dads groups, like they have such a difficult time with that exact conversation with guys. They're like, hey, come out to a dad's night out or whatever. And you always have the working dad who's like, well, I just put in like X amount of hours and I just want to go home or whatever, or I feel bad because I'm going to go do this. And, you know, my significant other is at home, you know, the mother of the children are at home or whatever with the kids. And it's like, you know, I always tell people, I'm like, my big thing is like, you just got to balance it. Like if you're getting a night out, then they get a night out. Like, you know, that's the whole thing. Like you've got to have that ability to make those efforts possible so that you can have that connection with other dads or, you know, whatever that looks like kind of deal. So I think a lot of times it's just people just kind of like breaking the like normalization of things off and coming up with a new way to live life and to be able to have those times where it's like it's okay to go bowling or whatever with a bunch of other people, like, and you know, your spouse and kids not be there, like totally fine. And then vice versa, like you stay home, the kids, and let them do that. And as long as you have that balance, that's where, you know, you find I guess that's where you build some equity and, you know, like in your family and balance. So
self-care is best care.
Yes, sir.
Ooh, nice.
Especially in the month of November.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I plugged that in there. We were talking about that earlier before you came in.
I woke up this morning. I was like, "Am I going to shave this year?" Because a lot of times I'll shave for Halloween to make a go as Magnum PI for those that may remember that show.
Yes.
Or
wow, I need a picture of that. I have got to see a picture of that. If I have to find your wife and blackmail you, I don't know what I got to do, but I've got to see a picture of you of Magnum PI.
There may be one on Facebook. If you dig deep enough into my profile pictures, I definitely bought a Hawaiian shirt and white slacks.
And the deep dive into Facebook begins.
Oh, you didn't go with the super short shorts that he always wore, man. That's the proper length for a man's shorts. No, that is not.
A cold year. I didn't want to hurt myself. Yeah. So no. But sometimes I can pull off the mustache. Sometimes I can't, and that's okay. But but yeah, self-care is great. And I think that's also why I talk about Eve Rodsky's fair play method and how to like gamify the home so that it's not, the mom being the executive director of the home and the dad's coming home and just being the manager, right? And I talked a bit about this last week with Matt for the webinar of even like 2 years or yeah, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago when I was at the Cincinnati Home Dad Con, I like how many dads there are the primary caregiver and yet they still defer to their partner because there's still a part of the stereotype getting in the way and not putting that emotional investment into the home, right? There's still that disconnect happening for dads.
Yeah, to me, the biggest one that I see on a regular basis, I feel like I see it in Fathering Together. I see it in the National At-Home Dad Network. I've seen it in like the International Stay-at-Home Dad Group. It is this idea of whose money is it? In that whole balance. And man, that always strikes up a very heavy conversation because it's like, well, if you're together, it should be our money situation. And like there are people that go back and forth on it. It's like, that's going to be the thing. Like you've got to figure out how to get on the same page about the money situation. Because
yes,
if you're deferring back to one or the other on certain things, like, it can just get unbalanced. I know like in with my marriage, like we have the our money type portion of it, but we'll talk about it and figure out what we want to do. But it's all balanced in that, how that works out. It's like, oh, I need to go ask Corey if I can do XYZ thing. Like, I know like this is okay. If it's a huge purchase, that makes total sense. But if it's just something minimal, like, there's no big deal. But you hear guys all the time talk about like, oh, I just want to go buy this one thing, but I got to go take it to my spouse. And it's like, because it's her money. And it's like, oh, like that is such the wall that just like makes relationships so hard. So yeah, I get it, man.
And money in any relationship. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and that's something that has to happen before marriage, not even before kids, right? Like,
oh yeah,
the expectations of what is this union really, right? Like, yeah, you can have all the flowery language, and I've officiated enough weddings to, ensure that if I say yes to officiating somebody's wedding, I always have a few pre-marriage wedding meetings. And I'm like, all right, have you all talked about this? I don't care what your answer is, but have you talked about it? Right?
Yes.
Have you talked about this,
Good.
this, and this? And
yeah,
and I think that comes out in my book too, where so many dads, I'm like, are you ready for your kid? Like, what did you do to prepare? And they're like, well, I built the crib, or I did these surface level things. They didn't do that deep internal reflection of, hey, it's 3 a.m. and I'm at my wit's end and exhausted. How am I going to react to this baby? Right? Or how am I going to react when my wife says it's your turn and I have a massive interview or a big presentation at work, right? Like, what's that, the safety nets that you're building before the stress, right? And there's just so many people that don't do it enough. My wife and I definitely didn't do it enough with our first kid, and we survived. But there were definitely moments where I was like, oh man, did I really want to be a dad? Who was that? That young
what
man
was I
who
thinking?
was like, I can't wait to be a dad someday, just because I watched a sappy TV show, right? Or didn't cover the 3 a.m. night feedings and wet diapers.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. I think that into like even after you have your first kid, like, I feel like you could read books and still not be completely prepped for it. It's such there's audibles all over the place on what's going on and what you're gonna do. So
that old adage that there is no plan that survives the battlefield. That effect is like, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, are you? That's amazing. Yeah. Wait until you have a baby. And then you tell me, I knew people that said, oh, well, we'll just, if we want to go out, we'll just pack the kid up and take a pack and play and go. And I'm like, yeah, I want to see that. I want to be there when you try to do it. And I want to watch the whole thing. I would like to record it if I can, because you are going to make so many people just laugh uproariously when you try to just roll your kid into a suitcase. I don't know what you're going to do, how you're going to get that done. But then having those kids in place. And again, we all fail. We all make mistakes. But in everything, I think that most of the dads that I know do, we're involved, we're active, and we're growing. That learning mindset that is like, okay, so I'm not the greatest dad in the world. That's okay. So I made some mistakes. That's also okay. You can't learn anything from success. Making mistakes is what teaches you to be a better dad, right?
Yeah.
And I love to, and I'm going to go back to your book to where you're tying in that those business models and that business ideas and those words that a lot of us grew up with in our jobs before becoming a father or while we're a father still. That, oh yeah, well, why can't I just manage this? All I got to do is get my kid fed, dressed, fed, and out to school. Why? Yeah, this is an easy process. I'm going to write down this is my timeline. This is my spreadsheet that we're going to do. This is where your clothes are going to be. Boom, we're done. And it's just a beautiful thing, I think, to bring all that mindset of everything that a dad can be and how that can help you connect to your family. So I love the book, by the way.
Cool. Now, I'll just say it is really easy. It rolls off the tongue to say dress fed and out the door on time, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe 30% of the time, that's how quick and easy it is, especially in multiple kids. But anyway, Brock, you're going to say something.
Yeah. So I was just curious, like, kind of getting back into other things that Fathering Together has been doing. And just like, I remember, I don't know if the book touches on this or not, but you guys have like these school-based programs for dads, from what I understand.
Yeah, we're piloting them this academic year. Yeah.
What does that look like? Yeah. What does that look like exactly?
Yeah, so kind of a couple different avenues really that we've been developing them, but essentially finding a champion at that school who is a dad who wants to be involved beyond just dropping a kid off at the curb or at the door and saying see you later, right? And so working with that dad to set a meeting with the principal, with like the PTA or governing like parent group to say, hey, dads are not as engaged in this school. We have an approach that might get them engaged. And it involves meeting a couple times as just dads to talk about fatherhood, and then planning a dad-child event of some kind, like a service day where they, clean the field or shovel walkways, depending on the time of year or where you live. Or it could be like dads come with breakfast and
could it be dads with donuts? Is that?
Yeah, dads with donuts. Dad makes pancakes. And obviously like dads as who defines themselves as dads, right? Like if the dad is actually biologically the uncle, but they're the guardian, like who cares, right? Like you've got a relationship with the kid, come and let's celebrate parents. And so it technically it's that simple, just getting a dad who's interested to recruiting and building a group. And then what we do at Fathering Together is provide those learning toolkits. So if one school is looking to do more on like, what's my legacy going to be? Great. Here's a facilitation guide that we'll give to the chapter leader. And then they have an hour and a half long conversation once a semester kind of thing. Maybe they want to do more around communication skills or just building that learning mindset and stepping back and letting their kids co-facilitate learning in the home rather than the dad dictating all the things. But the other piece that we're really striving for is getting schools to recognize that dads can be the primary parents. There are so many, and I'm sure you get this a lot, where we're on the forms, we turn in the forms, we show up, and yet the wife, mom, whomever, someone else gets the first phone call. And it's like, I literally live 2 blocks from the school and she's downtown working. Why am I not getting the first phone call? Right?
We've learned in some ways just to like leave Corey's information off. Like my son missed
put it on there.
Well, just my son actually missed getting to go to a birthday party this past weekend because my wife doesn't always check her personal message emails because she's busy with work emails, and she was looking at her personal emails tonight and was just like, oh yeah, like so and so invited Hezekiah to this birthday party, and I'm like, crap. I'm like, did it go to your personal email instead of the family email? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, we got to take that off of there. Like, because usually we keep that kind of stuff off. But our school has been really good about they know to contact me. And I'm there quite a bit too, because I volunteer all the time doing stuff. So, but yeah, I completely understand. Yeah. Schools need to realize like if they put down dad is the primary caregiver, you call mom, you're getting mama bear. Like you might not make it through that. You might not make it through that phone call.
Yeah. And so it's really kind of a two-way street of the systemic issues that are school systems, but also like nursing and doctor's offices, dental, like everybody
Yeah.
just assumes moms, right? So it's that systemic issue, but then it's also getting dads the confidence that they can be a field
Mhm.
trip supervisor or they can be a room parent and help organize. And sometimes, like, I think that's the other piece. Sometimes the mom is a much better business person and the dad is just more naturally
Yeah.
need to be at home. Like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
there's no rule that says moms are just naturally genetically predisposed to being the caring nurturing one.
Well, I mean, I know some moms who basically are like, I suck at being like the I'm around the kids all the time thing. Like I can
Yeah.
do it for a small period amount of time, but to do it all day, no,
Mhm.
that's I defer to him at that point kind of
Yeah.
deal.
Right. Right. So why wouldn't we let dads in, right? Like why
Right.
don't we just assume dads are caring, loving individuals
Yeah.
just like their moms can, right? So we have a lot of ambitious goals, but essentially, last year I took the year off to really do some deep work on Fathering Together and really shift it into a fully functioning nonprofit. And we threw a lot of spaghetti at the wall as to what the nonprofit would be rather than just a Facebook group or just an online community. And we, long story short, we settled on let's develop these school-based dad groups. And we have 2 pilots going on right now, and one is successful because the principal is a new dad. He's got a 1.5-year-old, so he's like, I want to make sure that this is successful because I'm going to have a kid in 3 or 4 years
Mhm.
that I'm going to need to be involved, right? And
Yeah.
so how can he be the change, much like these dads are currently doing? And we're starting at focusing on the elementary school level, partially because of just bandwidth, but also because our hope is that by investing in dads at that stage, they'll stay invested in the middle school,
Well,
college,
dad's still cool at that point too.
and dad is still cool. Yes,
It's true.
Dad, dad is
Yeah.
totally cool to come into the
Yeah,
school. I mean,
you're Superman.
I feel very blessed that I can walk in and my 9-year-old runs up and wants to give me a hug in front of all of his class, and it's not a big deal. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other piece too, like I've talked with guys at City Dads, I've talked with you all, and my kids are involved in scouts. So like, lots of dads are there. And it's not like we at Fathering Together need to have the stamp that everything is the Fathering Together way, right? Like we fully appreciate being our name, Fathering Together, and being a part of a solution. So we may
Mhm.
provide the curriculum, but this scouts group is actually going to be investing all of the logistics of doing a service day because those networks are already established.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like again, use the strengths that you have and that you're given rather than forcing another thing on everyone's plates because
Yeah.
I don't want to go to another meeting. I struggle to even like check my bank account because that's another website I have to go to. Right. Like there's the easiest way, the most efficient way is going to be the way forward 99% of the time. So
Yeah.
let's just
And
do it.
it's like you said, it's already there. They've got the infrastructure. They can handle
Right.
logistics, but they know the schools, they know the property probably, and they definitely know the kids.
Right.
So yeah, and the idea too, and I love this because it's so unusual. But to see any 2 dad organizations that you could probably find will happily work together. We're going to the same place. We have the same goal. And
Yep.
I'm sure there are egos out there and I'm sure there are, aberrations,
Never.
let's say, that would be, an issue about it. But the reality of it is we're all going this way. And if I or we can help you or them to move forward in that goal, we're just doing the same work. Me helping you is just you helping me, really, because the end result is how do we have the best fathers that a family can have? How do we make the best fathers exist? And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And I went around and around for my title and the subtitle. Like anyone, I'm sure other authors have said the same, but like it's so hard to like, how do you encapsulate everything into just a little thing? And ultimately, all of my friends and colleagues were like, just call it Fathering Together. Everybody knows the nonprofit, just make the book the same thing. So then I was like, okay, that's easy. Now what are we going to do with the subtitle? And ultimately I went with Connected Dad because I think this pathway that we're all moving towards is that connection, right? It's not this idea of, well, as long as I'm providing and keeping a roof over my kid's head, I'm successful. Like that's just so passe. And when I talk with different dads, or not as dads, but just funders and moms and people who are getting involved with Fathering Together, like I always stress that 3-piece suit, high executive that is working 60 hours a week is just as prone to fatherlessness as the stereotypical deadbeat dad that's not there for their children. And
Yeah.
and it's just easier to hide behind the money in the three-piece suit than it is, what media says is a deadbeat dad. And so when I present that to individuals, it brings a whole new light to what fatherhood is and what fatherlessness can be. And it really starts to help us unpack, okay, well then how do we connect, right? How do we just spend time, as we talked about already?
That subtitle, though, living a connected dad life, is something that it fits so well, because when you talk to dads, they talk about their childhoods and how they never were able to connect with their dad, or there was a misconnection or something along those lines. And you hear from time to time people be like, oh, like I'm an active and involved dad. Like, yes, that's a great description, and it works. However, the connected dad, like allowing that to actually like come into a place where it's like, hey, like my dad is a connected dad. Like I've been able to connect with him on these things, and we, it's like, it just has a better feel to it, I feel like. And it has just a better, it just visually comes across as like, okay, like, here I am, like connecting and being able to feed off of the things that my dad is teaching me. And, how do I go about that in my life? What do I carry on as I grow into being an adult, and all these other different avenues with it. So I love the subtitle.
Thanks.
I think it fits perfectly with exactly what's going on right now. And I feel like it's something that just fits with, or resonates even actually with what a lot of folks who are just wrestling with that whole idea of like, I'm a dad now, but I didn't grow up in a family where my dad was connected, or, I didn't learn anything from him. So I'm trying to figure this all out on my own. And that's the thing that I feel like we see in our group. I'm sure that's what you guys see in Fathering Together, are guys who are in that sense of fatherlessness and just trying to figure out how to do it. And they walk into a group and go, hey, I'm the new guy. How hi, like it's just awkward, but at the same time too, they're so eager and hungry to just like, what do you got? What are you gonna give me, kind of deal. So I'm very happy that this book is an available resource for dads to be able to get a hold of. Where can we get the book, by the way? Where can guys get the book?
All the online stores: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop, Book Depository. Those are the big four that I'm rattling off. And then I'm based here in Evanston, North Chicago area. So hopefully soon I'll have some physical copies in bookstores as well. But probably the easiest way would just be to go online and order it. And what was I going to say about the title? It's eluded me. So it's all good. Email me and I'll figure out, if you're listening, what I was going to say, and that'll be like the nugget to stay involved. Something to do with the connected piece, but just the fact that like as people right now, we're very disconnected, right? Like this social media piece that we've alluded to with Facebook that we've been on, and it's so active. Like I love it, but there's still a surface level there, right? And most of my deep friendships I've built from Facebook didn't just stay on Facebook, right? Like I've contacted them or DM'd them and met up eventually, right? And so how do we use social media as a springboard? How do we use this book? But how do we use fatherhood as a shared experience to connect, not just with our kids, but with one another? So
that's great. Well, hopefully we get to connect with you in September of 2023 when we're up in Milwaukee.
I will be there. Will be
be there for sure.
Because that's not far.
I'm planning on it. I feel bad that I couldn't.
Okay, don't tease me.
But no, Matt already laid the guilt trip on me after we did the webinar. So.
He got after you on the webinar.
But no, I mean, we have a lot of dads up in Milwaukee that have bought the book or are part of Fathering Together, and a good friend of mine works with Sprecher. He's their marketing director. So no promises, but I've got some.
Are we talking about Sprecher root beer? Is that what you're talking about?
Some tasty adult beverages too. So we will.
Yes, they do.
Play our cards right. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get some connections.
That's cool. but no, I'm excited to hear that you're
Yeah.
going to be there. I'm planning on driving up to Milwaukee and actually stopping in Chicago and a bunch of other guys that we're talking with to actually go to a
Nice.
Cubs game on
Brock's
either
gonna
Tuesday
ride
or
his
Wednesday
motorcycle.
night. So I'm not gonna ride my motorcycle.
We should like start talking to the
Lord.
Cubs now, so we can like you can throw out the first pitch, Brock, and or just have
Ooh,
like
gosh.
Oh, wow.
a dad celebration, because I'm sure there's plenty of Cubs players that have dads or are dads.
That would be great, but I would definitely feel bad to be the Reds fan throwing out a
Fair
pitch at the Cubs game. I know a couple other guys who
Fair
are
enough.
Cubs fans that would probably love that, and I would rather hand that off to them.
Well, then you don't have the
honestly.
pressure
So,
of throwing
but-
it across the plate.
Right? That's what I was thinking. You do not want me throwing that ball. I'd be like, yeah. If I hit you in the head, I'm sorry. It's
Right.
it's coming at you. It's not going to be fast.
I
You
mean-
should be able to avoid it, but here it goes.
don't get me wrong. I would love to be able to check that on my
Yeah.
bucket list for sure.
I don't
that
know
would
if
be
I could
awesome,
still
but
throw
I
a
think
ball that far from on a professional. I don't know the length for a professional from the.
It's what 90? It's
45.
90 feet, I think. That's not. That's
I
not
thought it was
awful.
90.
Isn't it?
What is it?
Well, it's
40?
90 is from base to base, but I'm pretty sure it's like 45, 50 feet from the mound to home plate.
I could probably do that. Yeah,
I can throw that.
At like
I
12
can do
miles
that.
per hour.
I had shoulder
Yeah.
surgery, man. I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, you need a bionic shoulder. Anyway,
I'm sure
getting
everyone
off.
who's listening is like, who are these three guys talking about?
Yeah, there we go. We're coming up
Yeah.
against our time, but Brian, this has been quite a pleasure to just get a talk with you, honestly. And we'll definitely in the show notes have information on where folks can get the book. Hey, and the fact that we're coming up into
Hey,
Christmas time, it'd make
it
a
is a
great
great stocking
stocking
stuffer.
stuffer for the dad, out there. So there's that option as well. But yeah, I think just the fact that, the book's available, the group is out there to join, and then too, like the bonus of if you come to Home DadCon, you get to hang
Yeah.
out with you
The
and
man, the myth,
a
the
lot of the
legend.
other dads that are
I'll
involved.
bring a pen and sign
Yeah.
books. I will throw
There
myself
we
at
go.
the mercy of my fans. Or not. Maybe there'll be like one guy there. Oh yeah, I read that ages ago. No, I'm kidding. Anyway.
But yeah, so thanks so much for coming on the show, and I'm really just looking forward to getting this out there for everybody else. So hope we'll see you in September, and have a great
Thanks, you both
holiday
as well.
season.
Good night, everybody.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.